SimWorld presents Around the Table with E and the Fat Man.
What's up, everybody? It's me, it's the B.O.B., and I am finally back here with my man, E. E, how are you feeling after your week off?
Finally, weeks is more like
That's
it.
true.
You know, I had a week of cross-country travel, California to Illinois, and then within 24 hours of ending that, promptly came down with COVID. Ooh. So, yeah, had that going for me. And, if we want to get into the details, I actually quickly shook the COVID and moved right into a sinus infection.
Oh, good.
Oh, I know. Yeah, it's just been a rolling series of thrills over here. But I'm glad to be back. Let me give a shout out to Davion. Davion, thank you for stepping in, taking my role. And I heard you guys had a very entertaining discussion of wrestling and how that kind of ties into basketball and all things too. And sorry I missed that, but you know what? You two were much more qualified to talk about that topic than I am. Whereas today's topic, I at least have some good insight to share. So baseball today, being what we're talking about, which is appropriate. You know, October just here, and we got the playoffs around the corner. Everything pretty much decided at this. Well, in the American League, it is. In the National League, though, still got two playoff spots, two of the wild card spots to determine in there. Milwaukee, the Padres, and the Phillies, basically fighting it out for those last two positions.
Hey! You can't leave out the Giants.
The Giants, mathematically, that's the word you're looking for. Still mathematically alive, but in pretty much every other sense, a little bit DOA. But you know what? Hey, actually, I'm glad you brought them up. I'm glad you brought it up, first of all, to be technically correct. And secondly, the Giants have closed the year here. So probably too little too late, almost certainly too little too late. But I do like the effort they're putting out there. And I like that Mike Yastrzemski kid. We're going to talk about favorite players in a little bit, and he might have a relative that might come up in my list. So,
all right. Well, I want to say you said the playoffs are right around the corner. You mentioned who's still in the hunt. I want to mention what we're doing here. This is around the corner. This is not around the corner. This is around the table with E and the Fat Man.
Around the corner.
I don't want to make the mistake of not mentioning the title of our little podcast until the end, like I did when me and Davion did it.
Well, no, and then you scared the crap out of me. I thought we renamed this thing while I was away. Nobody told me.
Yeah, you had no input on that. So this is around the table with E and the Fat Man. I am the Fat Man. He is E. I almost said I was E. I was changing the whole thing on you, apparently. And we use this to talk about sports. But, hey, we'll jump right back into it. So outside of the playoffs, there's been a couple, I guess, historical things really happening this past season. I think the biggest one, I don't know, the three biggest ones. We'll talk about the three major. There's three. Let's start with Albert's home run chase.
Yeah.
He's been doing it for he's been doing it for a long time, and
20 years now. Yeah, 22, something like that.
As of the middle of the day, Saturday, he has hit 701, and couple okay players ahead of him on that list. I think you got Bonds. Go ahead.
I was going to say there's only three. There's only three on that list. There's only four to have hit 700 on time, and of course Bonds, Hank Aaron, and Babe Ruth, and now Albert Pujols back home in St. Louis and getting it done. They're actually having a Indian summer of a final year here. But he has just had a fantastic final season for the Cardinals. It's hard not to like Albert Pujols.
Yeah.
Probably even if you're an arch rival of the Cardinals, a Cubs fan, something like that. It's still, I think, personally difficult to root against him. I know I'll be rooting for him. Probably one of the top 10 players of all time. I'm not sure that you can take that away from him.
Yeah.
I don't even want to go too far down that road of naming people because it's always tough and always Willie Mays gets left out or something and it's completely wrong. But He's, this is capstoning a career with a really strong argument being in the 700 club for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And he's never really had any controversy around him. The only controversy that I can think of, and even as a fan of a team that is is in the same division as the Cardinals or the Pirates,
Mm-hmm.
the only controversial thing, I didn't like that he left. Like, obviously, I'm a big fan of when a player sticks it out with the same team for his entire career.
Sure.
And you obviously, seeing him leave was a good actually, there's no such thing as a good thing for the Pirates, but I digress. Seeing him leave was a good thing for the other teams, but it was still something didn't sit right when he went to the Angels, and he was never really the same player.
No, he never quite sort of hit that same level, almost in a way like this year too. Just sort of didn't do anything to kind of capture the imagination quite the same way that he did all of those years there with the Cardinals. Not that he was terrible in Anaheim, of course, but no, I agree. There is something very romantic, and particularly with baseball, about being a one club kind of guy, and that's possibly the only slight smudge on his record, but it's a slight one at best, and pretty impressive doing that there.
Absolutely.
Mentioned we're going to have three of these, and the second one to move on here too is also home run related. And Aaron Judge, setting the American League record, has tied Roger Maris, at time of broadcast here as we're recording with 61, looking for that 62 to take it on his own. But I'll make my comment here, which is we're talking about likability and hard to dislike an Albert Pujols even if you're a rival fan. And I'm an open Boston Red Sox guy. It got in my blood when I was a kid, still am. So, Yankee hitters going nuts and having fantastic seasons isn't necessarily something that's high on my Christmas list every year. But that said, I like Judge. I don't know how somebody really kind of couldn't. I like him. I like his backstory. I like his adoptive parents. He's just seems like a good guy. So I'm not mad at him about the whole thing here. I hope the Yankees don't win a World Series, but that's a different matter.
But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Bob. No, I'm done.
I was just going to say, it has a lot to do with a player's personality.
Sure.
And I think that's why a lot of Yankees players get a bad rap. I'm not going to say they get a bad rap. I mean, there's so many fake Yankees fans out there. They deserve the bad rap. But there's just so many players who they seem to come off fake, and Judge I think Judge is who you see every single day. For an example, being a Vikings fan, I should hate Aaron Rodgers, and there's never been anything that's made me go, you know what, I don't like this guy. And same with Favre for all those years. There was always something where you go, yeah, I'm kind of pulling for this guy a little bit, except when he pulls into Minneapolis or when Minneapolis heads down to Green Bay.
Right.
So it's
understand.
But, so like Judge, I feel you. He's one of those guys that I do think he is who he is, and not to jump on the steroid train, but I know we had talked a little bit before the broadcast. I said that I'd be disappointed if Ken Griffey Jr. ever got found out for using steroids. Judge would be another one of those players. I'd be super disappointed if it comes out that he ever did anything.
Well, there's been no hint around either one of those guys.
No hints.
So that is very good either as well. Aaron Judge probably looking at an MVP year this year. Although, actually, I'm going to roll with this, Bob. This is going to segue into our third kind of big story from the year because in my mind, there's a two-man MVP race.
Two-man.
Yeah. Or even just a mythical, best player in baseball this year kind of a thing, let's say. And here's the thing is I think it's going to end up being Judge. Because the Yankees were good and whatever else. The truth is that the best player in baseball right now is Shohei Ohtani, and it's not even close. We haven't seen anything literally, you're talking about. Okay, let me define my terms. Obviously, Judge is a better power hitter than Shohei. But in terms of, value, yes, value at the plate and value as a pitcher, by most metrics, Shohei Ohtani is the best hitter and the best pitcher in baseball right now. This is completely ridiculous. Babe Ruth had some fantastic years where behind the plate and pitching, he was a 20-game winner or 15-game winner and had a fantastic year. But we've literally not seen anything like this in the modern game, not in 100 years, more than 100 years.
Yeah, and just to talk about Judge a little bit, I think one of the things, like, he has the big home run numbers right now. And the one stat that sticks out to me is I don't want to say the lack of walks, because he's still been walked 100 times this year, a little over 100 times. But when it doesn't seem like pitchers are quite afraid of him yet, like they were of a Barry Bonds or something like that. Barry Bonds had been walked over 200 times in one season and was still, I think the year that he hit, was it 74? 74 home runs? I'm trying to remember.
73? I think it's 73. I think 73.
That season, he was walked 177 times, I believe it was. It's just like they were afraid, and that was not his highest amount of walks. Like, I just don't think people are quite afraid of Judge yet, which after this season, I think we're going to see.
Maybe they will be.
Yeah, after this season, his walk numbers are definitely going to go up. But yeah, it's hard to argue. It's hard to argue against either of these guys winning MVP. But when you look at strictly the value that a player brings, you're talking about a top starting pitcher also being one of the top hitters in the league. He's saving you money. That's something. Saving you that roster spot. So he is so valuable, because if you take Judge away, the Yankees are going to lose a bunch of games. If you take Ohtani away, they're going to lose more games, because you're not just losing his hitting ability and his ability to get on base and stuff. You're losing his ability to physically win the game as a pitcher. So
single person out there doing it too. And that is why he won't get the MVP, is the team part of it. Obviously, Anaheim didn't have a great year, but it's a team sport too. I don't like to penalize too much for that, but I understand that people do.
And I will actually say, I'm not going to argue with whichever one wins. I am probably on that side more than anything. If I believe that in order for somebody to be the most valuable player, you need to make the playoffs. Your team needs to get to the playoffs somehow. And again, the most valuable player is an individual award, but if you're the best player in the league, you need to find a way to get your team to the playoffs. That's my opinion. I
get the argument.
Yeah,
I get it. But I can't argue with the position at all. No doubt about that. I get it.
But I'm not going to argue. I will not argue if Ohtani wins it at all. I mean, he's just we have never seen somebody like him before.
Yeah,
and we
really have not.
Are we ever going to again? I don't know.
I don't know.
We went through that period of time, I believe, in the 90s, where how many football players, it wasn't a ton, I'm acting like it was like 20 or 30, but how many football players also played baseball? And it's like, is this going to be a new thing? Like, we're going to see more multi-sport athletes. And then when's the last time it's happened? Was it Sanders?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Deion Sanders might have been the last one to do it consistently like that. I thought it was going to be Russell Wilson, and I thought it was going to be Russell Wilson. I thought maybe Kyler Murray. I can't think of his name right now. He's a rookie for the Pirates, but he committed to Penn State and decided to go to pro baseball. I thought maybe he was going to stay at I truly hoped he would stay at Penn State. If someone's throwing bags of money at you, I can't blame you for deciding to go the other route.
Well, I think that's a lot of it too. There's a big incentive to just kind of, focus on one thing and get the payday from it too. And I understand that, that makes sense to me. No blame being aside, but it does just kind of give Ohtani, even more of his kind of unicorn status from being able to do what he does.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned my favorite team. I didn't, other than them always being disappointing. I'm a Pirates fan. So I'm one of those people who I don't claim things from, I will mention them, but I don't claim things from before I can really understand them. So as a Pirates fan, I was born in 90. Technically, we went to the playoffs for 3 years whenever I was just out of the womb, and when I was 1 and 2, because
when Barry Bonds was still on your team.
When Barry Bonds was still on the team, like, technically, I don't count those. I didn't know what baseball was at that time, but since then, we've only made the playoffs 3 times, and it was 3 years in a row, and we lost in the wild card round 2 of those 3 years. We don't pay players. We don't develop players, right? I feel bad for anybody who comes to play for the Pirates. Who is your favorite team?
Well, I am a big Red Sox guy.
That's right. You did say that.
Yep, that's right. Got that out there. But a little bit of a different experience for me, where, like, my entire childhood growing up, being a little bit older than you, Bob, we went through some famous failures. There was the Bill Buckner ball between the legs. I was watching that live. Absolutely. I mean, even before that, there's Bucky Dent hitting the home run over the wall. There were all kinds of tragic moments piled upon tragic moments for Red Sox fans. But then the 21st century happened, and we won 3 titles.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't want to dwell too much on this, but I'll tell you something that's true. And I think maybe other fans of, like, long-suffering franchises realize this as well when it happens, which is that when you finally do win that title, whatever it is, after 50, 70 years or however long you've been in a drought, in a weird way, some of the specialness goes away too. I almost kind of miss it. I know that sounds weird.
You mean like after you win that championship, it's like you were fighting so hard to get to it, and then you win it.
Right. It means so much, and in the moment you are so happy about it. But you lose something too. That's just the truth of the experience.
Yeah, no, my wife's a Washington Capitals fan, and it was like they won the championship that year. Everybody was super excited, but then it was like they finally did it. Great.
Yeah.
Now
it's over.
It's over, right. And let's move on. And
right. It's more like an experience with a video game where you finally solved the last puzzle, beat the last big boss, and now it's done. It's like, what do you mean I have another level? Who cares? I did it. There's no more levels. This is it.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, Bob, then. As a long-suffering Pirates fan, and I guess your answer here doesn't have to be Pirates-centric, but best baseball memory you have? Is there something that stands out?
I think it's not a Pirates one. They're really, I have players where I'm like, oh man, it's such a great memory that he did this or he did that. It's actually when Josh Hamilton, his home run derby, when he was with the Rangers, it was just his story in general was such a great story, overcoming addiction and everything and making it back to the majors and just doing what he did. I believe he fizzled out a couple years later and he might have relapsed and everything, but just the show that he put on, and he didn't even win the home run derby. It was just how many he hit at that particular time. I'm sure people look back now because I didn't watch this year's, but I'm pretty sure somebody hit a ridiculous amount this year. But we're also in the juice ball era. I'm just but mine's Josh Ham. It's his. I think it was his first round. He hit like 26 or 28 home runs just for the time and the story. It was great. What about you?
Well, I'll personalize mine a little bit more. It's not going to be anything anybody's going to be able to remember watching, except for me being in it. But my first year of playing organized baseball, so T-ball, the ball's up on the tee, no pitching, and all the rest of that. My T-ball team, I remember we had purple and white uniforms. And the other thing I remember about us is we were the worst T-ball team to ever play on American soil. We played a 23-game regular season. I remember this. We played a 23-game regular season, and at the end of our 23rd game, we were 0-23 for a bunch of little, like, however old you are, 5, 6, 7-year-old. I don't even know anymore. 0-23. But the great memory is that at the end of it all, there was then like a tournament that all the teams in the T-ball league played. And, we got our one game. And of course, because we're the worst team, we're faced up against the best team. We beat them. We beat them by a run and won our first and only game of the year. And I mean, we might as well have won the Super Bowl, World Cup, and, Miss America contest all rolled into one. It was pretty amazing that we actually won a game, and everybody went pretty crazy. So that's the one I'll throw out there. Did you play any? I know that you played some football, as a kid? Were you a baseball player?
I did not play baseball. I did practice with my one of my best friends was a baseball player. He was a catcher. Well, he actually, honestly, he played every sport. He played baseball. He played hockey. He played football. He did everything. But I would practice with him in the backyard. Just to help him when practice wasn't going on. I would help him out and stuff. But I didn't play. Honestly, I was terrible. I was one of those guys where I never practiced. I didn't know anything about baseball, to be completely honest, and my swing was probably terrible. And every time I hit the ball, it hurt. I didn't want to do that.
Okay. Interesting.
Every single time I hit the ball, it hurt. And I'm like, I don't want to do this.
We might have to work on your grip. Something's wrong.
I was one of those one-handed batters because the two-handed thing was not for me. I was a big guy. The two-handed batting was absolutely not for me. But I wanted to kind of tie in SimWorld's last season with your Little League experience.
Okay.
So what you're saying is you guys were last season Seattle, formerly Seattle, now reigning Treys.
That's right. Yes, we were SimWorld Season 1 Seattle, basically. We might have been worse.
I guess reigning Treys. We're reigning Treys.
They won
a couple games in the season.
Yeah, it's true. Well, hey, I did have a second great personal playing baseball experience, and I did play organized ball for a long time, but I wasn't a star. I was actually, I always was, probably still would be if I went out and played today, decent in the field. I'm good with the glove, and I don't strike out much. I'm a contact hitter, but I don't have power. Never did. But my second little personal story I'll throw in here, and then I'll quit telling tales on myself, is about 15, 20 years ago, spent a couple years, I lived in London, was working over there. And I found out there was something called the British Softball League. So I'm like, oh, okay, all right. I found the team closest to me, and I sent them an email. I was like, hey, can I come try out for the team? And they sent me back a very non-committal note, something to the effect of well, our roster's really full right now and whatever, but our first practice of the year is actually coming up in a week, so why don't you come on out and, we'll take a look at you, blah, blah, blah. So I get out there, and first of all, there were a handful of, other like me expat Americans on the team, but 70-80% of them are Brits, native-born British people. They don't grow up with baseball. Yeah. And in fact, about half of them, their sort of natural swing, they're trying, in the batter's box, trying to make contact. It looks like, and I guess it makes sense if you think about it, it looks like cricket. Huh. If you ever watch anybody try to hit the ball in cricket where it's sort of going to be hard to explain, verbally, but it's almost like you're sort of swinging down at your feet a little bit more so than kind of coming across. And guys are taking cuts that way and whatever else. But the punchline of all of this is that one first practice session they had, I had the performance of a lifetime. I've literally not had a better performance at any level doing anything, any place I ever did before. I creamed one. I connected with one that is the most solid shot I ever had in my life. It was an easy walk around home run. I'm making diving stabs on liners. And from my knees, throwing guys out at first, snapping people's gloves. And at the end of the practice session, the guy who was running the team came up to me and was like, yeah, tell you what, you can be on the team. Why don't you bat number 4 and play shortstop?
Well, there you go.
You can do that. Yeah. And then I never played half as well again. It was like I just completely teased and fooled them. But it was an interesting experience playing over there. My career over there ended, by the way, when I badly broke my hand because once again, you're in England, so there's not a lot of baseball, set up around you. We're playing on converted cricket pitches and stuff like that. And ball just took a real funny hop and shattered my hand one day, man. And that pretty much ended it. So that probably wasn't my favorite ballpark ever visited, the Arsenal Cricket Ground or whatever it was called, where I had that happen. But let's talk about, instead of least favorite parks, maybe favorite parks. Now, being homers, I'm sure, you like me are going to have like a little bit of a attachment to it's PNC Park where the Pirates play these days. Am I correct about that? Is that what it's called?
I believe it still is. I know. I
So,
tried to. Yeah,
I know
I'm
these
pretty
things
sure it
change all
still
the time.
is. Well, it's like
Yeah.
Heinz Field isn't going to be Heinz Field anymore.
No, it's not. That's right. I know. It was better back in the days when it was just Three Rivers. I got to see some baseball played at Three Rivers, by the way back
Oh,
when. But yeah, yeah. Oh no, I've been to a few
I don't know.
ballparks. But if I had to pick a favorite, I mean, look, Fenway. First of all, it is a
Hey.
classic old park, and it's highly unique, and it's pretty cool to go there. And and if you go out into the left field,
The Green
say
Giant.
yeah, you can go and you can pound the giant if you want, which is kind of fun. But I
Is that
would say
legal?
actually, yeah,
I'm
well, if
just kidding.
everybody does it, it's Boston. So, but if I had to pick actually a favorite one, about a place or a team I don't care about, at least anyway. Got to give it to Oracle Park up
Hmm.
in San Francisco. That's right down on the waterfront there in San Francisco. It's a nice new park. It's a good experience. It's well designed. I'd say, it's modern but not soulless. Which is something that can happen all too easily. Yeah, but that's probably the one I would kind of pick when I'm taking my Homer hat off. At least I think is Oracle Park.
Yeah, and if I was doing the same thing, I would actually pick Fenway. So
Yeah. Okay.
it's the
All right.
green.
No.
It's the Green Giant. You
Yeah.
gotta give it up to
Yep.
them. It's historical, and it's one of those things that I know we're not talking about least favorite parks, but just I don't like. And I'm not going to hold this against Judge. I don't like the Yankees' new stadium because I believe it's smaller. It's smaller than most other stadiums, and it's just, I don't know. I'm going to hold it. I'm going to hold it against the Yankees in general, but not Judge.
I'll tell you the funny thing with me is having lived in New York, I used to go to Yankee again. Although I was a Red Sox fan, I went to Yankees games all the time. I've probably been to Yankee Stadium at least 50 times, probably more. I've not been to the new one. Just haven't happened to have been out there and caught a game since they built that new one. The funny thing is, whenever I watch it on TV, I can't tell the difference. It's like they built it to almost exactly mirror the other one, of course. And so I don't know. Jury's out. I'll have to go check that out in person.
go do a little
Before I can
jog, see how
say.
long it takes you to
Yeah.
get to the wall.
Right.
Well, we talk about favorite parks and everything. Do you have I'm going to say top three, but that's real difficult for me. But who are your top players of all time, or who are your favorite players of all time?
So from my childhood, and this is going to give the fact that I was a child in the 70s away, so can't pull that back now. Carl Yastrzemski. Again, I grew up a Red Sox fan, and look, if I wanted to just give all three of these spots to those 70s Red Sox teams, that would be dead easy because it'd be Yastrzemski, it'd be Freddie Rice, and I'm sorry, Jim Rice and Freddie Lynn. I almost mixed up their names there together. I was like, wait a minute. Jim Rice and Freddie Lynn. But definitely Carl Yastrzemski number one. And I am going to go back to the Red Sox for my other two players too, but they're going to be much less well known. There was a guy named Marty Barrett. Marty Barrett was the second baseman for the Red Sox in the 1980s. He was part of that Bill Buckner 1986 team that lost to the Mets. Marty Barrett was a good fielding, light hitting middle infielder. In other words, Marty Barrett is me if I was really good at baseball. So that's why I was a big Marty Barrett fan. And then the third one, and he had a little stint with the Pirates actually, is knuckleball pitcher Tim Wakefield. Always loved Tim Wakefield. Huge fan of him. I'm, fan of knuckleball pitchers and the knuckleball in general, the underappreciated art of the knuckleball. A few guys out there still doing it, of course, R.A. Dickey and whoever else. But Tim Wakefield, I just love the fact that you could trot him out there basically every day, too. Like, my arm doesn't get sore. I'm throwing the ball 60 miles per hour. Who cares?
No.
Those are the three I'd pick. So I know one legit star and two a little bit more unique, let's say.
Yeah. The reason it's so hard for me is there's so many biases that I have. The one thing that I always have a bias because of me being a big guy is I've always had a bias for the big guys. Literally, like I got Bonds, Ortiz, Domi, Frank Thomas, the Big Hurt. I mean,
loved. All right.
Yeah, like I just it's really hard for me to narrow it down because then I have you have your McCutcheons. I know before we started recording, you had mentioned Marte. There's so many Pirates players that I like, but I still the ones that if I was rattling off, I'll do a top 5. It'd probably be Bonds, Ortiz, Griffey Jr. I mean, it's hard to go against Griffey Jr. Drew blank. I guess that'll be my. I guess Frank Thomas will be in there, and McCutcheon. I'll do that as my top 5.
I was a big Hurt fan too. Again, never had any kind of personal rooting attachment, not so much, but but loved him as a player. So I like that one. I thought you were going to throw John Kruk out there at me. That almost seemed like a surefire guarantee.
If we were talking about if we ever did another NFL one, I would probably have to make sure I got the round mound of pound in there. Oh man, I can't believe I forgot his name. He just passed away. He was one of my favorite players. It was Kentucky quarterback. He was like 320 pounds.
Oh, Jared Lorenzo.
I loved watching him play. He was so nimble for a big guy.
hold on a second for the audience, but for me too. He just passed away?
Yeah, unfortunately, I believe he had a last year, I think it had to do with diabetes. It had to do with how big he was.
Poor guy. Yeah. I mean, I can see it, but still.
It seemed. I think it was a. It wasn't expected at the time.
No,
so it was just a sudden.
But it's the kind of thing too where when it does happen, you're like, well, yeah, right, okay, yeah. Poor guy. Well, sad note there, but. Let's brighten things back up by bringing it back into the world of hoops here, too. You know, when we've done these in the past, I guess maybe you and Davion didn't last week. There's probably not a whole lot of wrestling and hoops crossover. As far as I know, Roddy Piper didn't play in the NBA. I don't think. He tried out, but he didn't.
We did have a little bit of a crossover, but it's only because, if you remember, do you know what the Monday Night Wars were? So back when WCW was still around, and it was WCW versus WWF. Dennis Rodman, Karl Malone. They were WCW. WCW was throwing the money out there, trying to get their ratings up. So we had that, but nobody that I could think of to say, oh yeah, that was a basketball player that made a really good wrestler.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's been a few that have crossed the world between the diamond and hoops. Notably Danny Ainge, of course, Celtics player. Also remember him. I remember him as a Toronto Blue Jay at one point when the Blue Jays were actually still early in their existence. As a matter of fact, he was with them. There's another older name, and I'm pleased to say that this one is even before my time, so I can't directly reference it. But Chuck Connors. Best known as an actor, as a matter of fact. He was the star of a Western TV show called The Rifleman back in the 50s and 60s. He acted in other things too, but Chuck Connors also both played in the NBA and Major League Baseball, which, bored looking to learn about somebody who led an interesting life, check out Chuck Connors. Go to his Wikipedia page. You could do worse than to spend a life being Chuck Connors, playing pro basketball, baseball, and then becoming an actor. But probably the biggest name out there is the guy who never quite made it to the major leagues, but did have his baseball years, and that's Michael Jeffrey Jordan.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that guy.
He had I know it was specifically, we talked about it a little bit. We won't get into details, but that was a wish he was fulfilling that he made a promise he was fulfilling that he made his dad. So,
Yep. And respect to him. And look, and in my opinion, and, again, this was back in the 90s. I remember when it was all happening. Some people were like, Michael Jordan hitting 215, not that good. It's like, do you know how hard it is to hit a freaking baseball at AA level? You and I would never make contact.
No.
My batting average would be 0.000. No. I'd fall down every time they throw a curveball at me.
Is there anything below single A? Because I don't even know if I could do that.
Right.
I mean, so I will say that I truly believe this isn't going to be a Michael Jordan episode. We're going to cut this short here, but I truly believe they would have won 8 in a row had he not gone and done that.
I believe that's true, but I also believe that if Michael had spent maybe a few more years sticking with baseball, even though he would have been older for a prospect and whatever else, there is no doubt in my mind he could have and would have legitimately made a big league roster.
Yeah.
Not saying he was going to star, but, could he legitimately have made that? Yeah, that's how talented that guy was. That even in that much of a very different sport, could have got there. Now, I like this. This is a good segue into the world of SimWorld. Now, there were a few players last year. I know this got mentioned on a couple of the broadcasts I did, but there's actually 4 star players who are really good on the baseball diamond as well. And I think the one of them that never really got mentioned at all, I can't remember this, Marcus Leifat with Toronto, the North now, sticking around in the North. Talented baseball player, decent prospect, actually. Again, I don't know necessarily that he or any of these guys might have what it takes to do both at a high level in any kind of degree, but certainly at the prep level, Marcus Leifat, and then coming back this year for his senior year, one of my favorite SimWorld players, Brian Webb.
Yeah.
Also, talented baseball player, middle infielder, much like myself, but you'd also mention some big guys, and Jomo Graham. We all remember Jomo. 6'7", generously listed at about 275, if I recall, although might have been closer to 3, really. But, hard not to like that kid, hard not to root for him when he's out there playing basketball. But he's a pitcher, and he actually, he's got the basketball scholarship going to Arkansas, a loaded Arkansas team. I don't think Musselman is going to let him, but there's no reason... There's no reason to doubt that he could not play SEC baseball if he wanted to, and if the coaching staffs would agree to it.
Go for it if you can.
Go ahead.
No, it's just if you can do it, do it.
Well, and that brings me to the last SimWorld star I wanted to mention, and this guy does it when he wants to do it all the time. Trey Turner. Trey Turner also. I believe I can check this, but I believe he was an all-state baseball player as well.
He's one of those. He's just one of those pure athletes that could probably play. He could probably do all right at every sport.
Kid could probably bowl a 300 game if he wanted to. And I also did want to mention those were the 4 I really wanted to highlight, the two-way basketball guys from SimWorld. But got to throw him out there. The biggest star maybe of last year, Jamison Johnson, Rick Blaze's favorite, huge baseball fan, not necessarily a player himself, but is a huge fan of the game. So did just want to drop JJ in the mix there too.
Got to find a way to squeeze him in, I guess.
You got to do it. Got to do it.
Well, Eric, I really appreciate you being back. Miss Davey on. We're definitely going to have him on for another episode, but it's good to have you back. You're at least feeling better after the COVID stuff. Hopefully, it doesn't sound. I don't hear a sinus infection in you, so hopefully you're over that.
The antibiotics are doing wonders. I'll put it that way.
Well. Is there anything else you want to tell the people? Anything pressing you think they need to know?
No, just that I'm glad to be back. Good to be back with you, Bob. And tune in next week as well. We're going to be working on a new topic, new show, and we'll be back at you next weekend like we always are. And unless I stumble into some fresh disaster, I'll be back too.
Do we have any kind of concussion protocol? If one of us get a concussion, do we have to sit out a week? I don't know. Can't risk it.
I think, there's an independent doctor that Yells brings in.
Well, everybody, thank you for listening. I hope you have a good rest of your weekend. We will talk to you next week.
Later, folks.